one specific thing that no matter who you are joining today, you absolutely 100% definitely need to know. And that is a little bit about PR. So we're really excited for our next and final workshop presenter. Our VWS PR team, Candice from French Press, is actually going to be giving a presentation to teach you how to do your own PR, how to brand yourself. Hi, Candice, how are you?
Hi, I'm great. Thank you so much for having me join today. This is one of my favorite topics. So I fully believe that anyone can get PR for themselves at any stage. So I'm excited to share some gems.
100%. So I'm going to hop off, and Candice is going to tell you all about how we got things like Good Morning America to VWS. All right. I will see you in a little bit.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And hello, everyone who's joining us today. I am so excited to be sharing a little bit of my own journey and what I learned along the way. I do have a note up here as we get started. I highly recommend that you take this quiz. It's just 5 questions to learn your visibility path. Just go to bit.ly/16 paths and we'll get into why. But for now, we're going to dive into the secrets that founders need to know to get press. So by the end of this presentation, you're going to know the real definition of PR for founders, because I constantly see how folks don't really understand what PR really means, the main myths that founders and creatives have about PR and how they keep you stuck and struggling to land consistent placements, the exact strategy that my team and I use to figure out what the media trends are, and then what visibility path you are on and how to start making the most of it, because PR doesn't look the same for everyone. So let's dive in. I'm going to be going pretty quickly, so feel free to screenshot some things because I'm going to go fast. Marketing versus PR, what is the easiest way to tell those two apart, right? And the way that I like to explain it is that marketing is the story that you tell the world about yourself, and PR is the story that others tell the world about you. Right, so I'll go back and I'll say that one more time. Marketing is the story that you tell the world about yourself, and PR is the story that others tell the world about you. So when I say visibility, I'm going to be saying the word visibility a lot. What I mean is holistically your marketing and your PR strategies, because together they're inextricably linked. It's very important to be cognizant of the fact that what you put out into the world is what others are going to be saying about you, hopefully. Right? So the big question that you should be thinking as you consider your PR strategy is, how do I get other people to tell my story to the world? Right? That's all you need to be worrying about. So before we dive into the specifics of the strategies that I have for you today, I'm not your traditional PR expert. I actually started out as a serial social entrepreneur. So I began in education technology. I pivoted into sexual wellness, actually, and then I learned how to present myself to the media. And I found what moved the needle for me and started applying it to my work with other founders. And that's where I found that career pivot, because I found a ton of success in the media on my own, and for the products that I had. So I realized that visibility was my superpower and decided to help founders tell their stories in such a way that others will tell their story to the world. And that's where I founded French Press PR. Little bit of background on me and on my team. We call ourselves visibility gurus because we focus on that intersection of the strategies that you're using to tell your story to the world, and make sure that we're actually building relationships with folks that will be excited to become your champions. And that's really the point of great PR strategy. And of course, we were able to get a ton of different features, not only for VWS, but for a number of our other clients, all without prior relationships, all placed through strategic outreach. And so I'm going to talk about what that looks like for you today. So the reason why I teach this workshop is because I believe that we're all given this playbook as founders that is not necessarily made for us as founders. We've been given someone else's playbook for success, and very often that person is male, has access to a lot more money, and a lot more relationships in the world of fundraising or business than we have. And so we shouldn't be following that playbook, right? Our goal isn't necessarily to become the next unicorn, right? We should be thinking about what brings us traction, and how to build those relationships that can grow with us along the way. So I actually like to quote Bill Gates, because he always says, if I was down to my last dollar, I would spend it on public relations. And like, that's nice, but we're not Bill Gates, right? Your public relations strategy is a vital part of your business growth, but we can't follow that general playbook of PR when we're building out our digital footprint, right? We're not a household name, and could thrive off of $1. If you're down to your last dollar, you should be spending it on making sales. You should not be spending it on PR per se, even though that is a vital part of your business growth. So the reality is, what I realized for myself and for other folks that I've worked with, is there's not just one visibility path for founders. There's actually 16. And that's where that paths quiz is going to come into play. But more on that in a second. Let's go into the 3 myths of PR for founders. Now, these are the things that most frequently stop folks from either doing or delegating or just putting themselves out into the world. Myth number 1, I need to have media contacts or connections to be successful in the press. Now, you may have already guessed this because I've hinted at it, but that is absolutely false. What you actually need to be successful in press is the right story, told to the right person at the right time. Now, absolutely, you want to build relationships, and a relationship gets a foot in the door, but it never, ever guarantees a published story, right? So make sure that you're thinking about, what is that right story told to the right person at the right time. Myth number 2, I need to have everything ready before I start my PR efforts, right? That, that imposter syndrome masquerades itself as, I'm not ready. I'm not ready yet. My product isn't ready. My service isn't ready. My book isn't ready. I can't be visible yet. But that's not true. All you need is a digital footprint and the right type of story to tell. Even if you are pre-launch with whatever you're trying to bring out into the world, that doesn't mean that you can't still build your network of folks who need to know about your mission. Why are you bringing this thing out into the world? What is the problem that you're working to solve, right? Getting yourself out there and just building those relationships early on can be a great way to position yourself when you're actually ready to launch, because then you'll have folks that are already in your corner, right? So all you need is a digital footprint. And by that, I really just mean a website or a landing page, some place where folks can find you and the right story to tell. Myth number 3, PR isn't worth it unless I get a specific outcome, right? And usually when I hear some form of this myth, it's, I need to get into Forbes. I need to get into this particular logo, or have this on my website. I have to be here or there. And those things will come when you build out those relationships. But unless you're a household name, you can absolutely benefit from building out that digital footprint and making those relationships, because that's really what's going to be propelling you forward as your brand evolves and grows. And there are so many different opportunities for growth that don't necessarily fit in this scope of the traditional playbook of national PR, and they can still get you in front of your ideal client, right? Because that's one of the other things you need to think about with PR is, how can I get my story told to the folks that need to see me, right? How do I make sure that I'm telling my story to my ideal client, my ideal user, my ideal audience, right? And that can be podcasts, local news, conferences, networking groups, op-eds, blogs, Substacks, industry publications, anything that gets you visible, right? I just did a table for my local WeWork at a couple weeks ago on the 16 paths, and I ended up getting some clients from that, right? So that was a non-traditional visibility opportunity where I was able to have WeWork endorse me, and therefore people came over to hear what I had to say, right? So think about some of the other ways that you can get visibility and build out those relationships for yourself. Now, I want you to also think about the mindset shift for great PR. And when I say the mindset shift, I want you to really think about how you can tweak the way that you're thinking about building relationships with other folks, how you can get folks to tell your story, right? And this big shift is not about thinking, I'm going to get success by getting people to feature me or my brand. It's about showing people how you're adding value to them or to their audience. So I'm going to say that one more time. It's not about getting people to feature you or your brand, right? It's not about asking someone to tell, please share about me. Please share my story. I exist. I'm here. It's not about that. It's about saying, hey, this is what I offer, and this is why it's valuable to you. This is how I can offer you value, and that's why you should be sharing my story, right? So think about not what can they do for me, but what can I do for them? Right? That's a really important shift as you're considering your PR strategy, because that's going to impact how you tell your story and how you reach out to folks. Now, I know I've been talking a lot about the theoretical, but this does actually translate into your pitching, right? So when you add value by talking about what your ideal client needs to hear, and you're speaking to the journalists that are getting in front of those clients, that's how you'll have figured out how to tell the right story. Let's talk about the exact strategy, how you can find the folks that you're going to be reaching out to and trying to build those relationships. So for this, we're going to be talking a little bit about Whitespaces and the media landscape. And this is an exact strategy that my team and I use when we get started with a new industry. So the reason why we do this is we learn who we should be building relationships with. We learn what headlines and topics are trending. And then you also learn how to frame your story in your pitches to better attract the media and stand out from the noise. One thing I always say is that journalists are a masterclass study in what is clickable, in what is newsworthy. Even if you just familiarize yourself with what stories are happening and being published within your industry, you can start to get a sense of what way to frame your story to make yourself relevant within the news cycle. Now, a white space is opportunity. That's a gap in the media where you can insert your work, your voice, your opinions. And the way to find those white spaces is through something that I like to call media landscape research. And now media landscape, that's the holistic, entire collective digital and print narrative around your industry. And it gives you those really important insights into what your ideal audience is listening to, talking about, reading, watching, and also who to build those relationships with. So this is actually my favorite way to start with media landscape research, Google News, right? This is our secret weapon here. And we actually have several different searches that we like to do to give ourselves a sense of what are those trends and different story angles that we could be looking for. So I'm going to share them quickly. Feel free to take some screenshots because I might go a little faster just because of time. But here are the examples that we might start with. So when you go to news.google.com, you want to start by doing a general industry trend search, right? Just see what's out there in the news about your industry and start general. You can go specific from there, but just see what are the headlines talking about right now, right? So let's say you're in fashion, you might be searching eco-friendly fashion. As you're going a little more specific, you might search for top vegan leather purses. And every time you get those results coming up, take note. What is the publication? How are they framing the result? How are they framing the headline of what's clickable? And save that link because you may want to reach back out to that journalist. Number 2 is an ideal customer search. And sometimes this one can give us some really interesting insights because it's putting us in the mindset of how our ideal client or customer thinks, right? So make some searches as if you were your ideal customer. Think about their pain points and what they might be looking for, right? So someone might be asking, how do I find a vegan wedding planner? What does that what can I do there? What are the best vegan, non-allergenic products for kids? That could be an example of a question that somebody might ask, right? And the answers for those are going to show up in the form of perhaps advice columns. You might find answers in brides.com or Zola, something like that, where they're giving some suggestions and quoting folks that are wedding planners who have suggestions on plant-based weddings. And then on the other side, you might find for non-allergenic products for kids, you could very easily find some gift guides, some roundups, or even features on particular products. So it's a great way to figure out what types of stories are being told and how your customer might be looking for answers within media. Number 3 is a timely or location-based search. So this is where you take a look at the timely or location-based stories. It could be by season, it could be by month, it could be by year, or you could go by location, right? So that could be the top vegan restaurants in Queens, New York, sustainable businesses in Vancouver, gifts for Mother's Day, right? So think about the different spheres of your industry, what times, seasons, locations are relevant for the work that you do, and include that in your search, because you never know who you might be able to connect with, who is a local reporter. And then number 4 is a competitor search. So as you're finding these lists of media publications and articles, and you read through them, you'll start to see competitors show up. So that could be links to products, or it could be examples of folks giving their expert opinions. Take note of who those competitors are and do the same searches over again using the competitors' names now to see what's coming up for your competitors. How were they mentioned in the media? And how have they spoken about your industry? And you can also search within the publications that you would like to research, of course, right? You don't just have to use Google News, but you can go very specifically into vegnews.com, for example, and search within the website to get a sense of different articles. Now, for this one, I will say you can actually outsource this task once you've done it for yourself for the first time. It's a very easily delegatable task. And I would recommend doing it maybe once a quarter, just to refresh yourself on what's happening in the media. All right, can't talk about PR without talking about outreach, right? Most folks will ask me, how do I reach out? What is the perfect PR pitch template, right? And what I'll tell you is that there isn't one. And I'm sorry to say that, but there are some guidelines for what you can do when you're reaching out that can help build that relationship, right? Because you don't just want a generic plug and play template. You want to understand how to connect with someone. So when we're thinking about your outreach, I've broken it down into 3 categories. Here's what you must have, here's what can't hurt, and please don't do this last thing. So for must have, start with a compelling or clear subject line, right? So think about back to your media landscape research. Again, journalist masterclass study in what is clickable. If you're reaching out to BuzzFeed, you may want to include a BuzzFeed-like subject line in the email that you send out. If you're reaching out to Wall Street Journal, it's going to be something a little different, right? So think about that tone and how you're structuring your subjects. Explain the value and story that you're offering. Don't beat around the bush. Keep it short and simple, right? Include that call to action. Please check out my website. I'd love to send you some product. Let's hop on the phone. Would you like to grab a coffee, right? Those are all examples of calls to action. And then mention the connection to their work, right? Journalists like to know that you're not just mass outreaching to folks, and that they've actually been specifically selected for you to speak to them. So make sure that you're chatting there. Can't hurt, embed a photo, include a link to your media kit or one-pager, offer to connect on a call or in person, or follow and reach out on LinkedIn or Twitter, X now, because it's professional, right? So including more information, not in the form of words, but in the form of photos, media kits, things like that, that can be really helpful so that they don't feel like they have to do additional work, right? Do some of that work for them up front so that you can start that conversation. And then finally, please don't write a novel. Don't forget the value. Don't forget to include your website or important links. Don't reach out to someone who isn't relevant, and definitely don't follow on Facebook or Instagram or Snapchat. That's a little too personal at first. So make sure, remember that you're building a professional, not necessarily a personal relationship. So keep it professional. Now, we're getting to the end here. I know that I need to speed up a little bit, so I'm just going to give you a quick recap of what I covered. I know it's a lot of high level and strategy, so keep these things in mind, right? Remember to offer value to the people that you want to reach. Don't just reach out and say, I exist, this is who I am, but say, this is why I think I can offer value. This is why I think your audience would love to try this particular product. This is why I know that my opinion on this issue within the industry is valuable, and you should have more diverse opinions in your folks that you're reaching out to and your sources, right? You don't need prior media relationships. What you need to do is tell the right story to the right person at the right time. Definitely research your media landscape. Get out of your head and your own biases and your own bubble. See what else is happening out there in the world around you, because that can really broaden your understanding of how to pitch yourself. All you truly need to get started with building relationships is a landing page and the story that you want to tell, right? You don't have to launch your product or your service, but you can absolutely reach out to folks that are aligned with your message and your mission to start conversations. Build your digital footprint consistently. Definitely don't just chase those big wins. Forget the old playbook for PR success. Focus on what brings you consistent traction and builds out your digital footprint. And then finally, the biggest takeaway that I would love for you to remember is you don't have to do it all at once. Now, this is one of the reasons why my team and I created the 16 Paths. After hundreds of conversations with founders over many years, we realized that there were certain patterns that if you answered just 5 questions, we could actually figure out exactly what you should be doing and what you don't need to do yet, or what you should be avoiding as far as your visibility strategy. So I would highly recommend when you have a minute or 2 minutes, that's literally all it should take you, go to bit.ly/16 paths, take the quiz, and then we'll actually send you a custom PDF with some examples of strategies that you could be benefiting from, so you could learn a little bit more about your path. And with that, final couple of things I wanted to share as a sneak peek. We're actually going to be turning these 16 paths into a membership and community. So 16 visibility paths, 3 membership tiers, and 1 clear roadmap forward. We designed it to be accessible at literally every stage of business. We've designed it to be way less expensive than any full service PR, but actually give you some concrete strategies that you could either delegate or DIY. So if you would like to learn more, join the waitlist. You can check it out at frenchpresspr.com/ascend. And now I'll open it up for questions. Ooh, I need some water. Thank you, Connie, for sharing the quiz. Yeah, happy to answer any questions that folks have. Someone asked, what are the most popular vegan topics right now? Well, I would encourage you to check that out for yourself on Google News. But I would also say that if you are interested in learning more, learning more about what news is trending, you know, search some of the larger search some of the larger industry topics. So you're going to be seeing a lot about sustainability. You're going to be seeing a lot about climate change, and you're going to be seeing a lot about oh gosh, I mean, right now there's a lot of gift guides out there, so you're going to be seeing a lot of gift guides. But yeah, feel free to get specific about the industry, and I can give you some more insights. Ooh, Tracy, great question. Is help a reporter out worthwhile? It can be. It can be. There's actually diminishing returns I found on Haro. There's another site that I think you might benefit from. It's called Quoted, Quoted, that I think has higher quality asks from media. I would say depending on your bandwidth, right? Because at whatever stage you're at, you have limited bandwidth, you have limited budget, you have limited time, you have limited mental and emotional energy for things. So if you feel like you have the bandwidth to sit and go through Help a Reporter Out 3 times a day and scroll through, that's fine. And you may find some really great opportunities. However, that having Haro, I would say, is actually really a great task to delegate for somebody on your team. Oh, and you have to log into search now? Yeah, see, I have stepped away. I've stepped away from Haro. Which social media account is most helpful for getting PR? Well, Jenny, I love that you asked that because it used to be Twitter or X, but ever since Twitter became a dumpster fire, a lot of journalists have actually fled to LinkedIn. And so I actually really like LinkedIn for building media relationships because it allows you to be more personal, right? And personable. And so you can, by posting on LinkedIn about some of your interest, reposting what journalists are writing about and commenting and engaging with them, you can actually start to build out those professional relationships. It's become a fantastic networking site. And Sandra, you mentioned 100% regret not adding every pod host who's interviewed you on LinkedIn. I mean, honestly, go back and do it. Go back and do it. Like it's never too late. Reach back out and say, hey, was thinking about the interview that we did and would love to connect. There you go. Is making a newsletter worthwhile? Great question. Again, depends on your bandwidth, right? Is it worthwhile because it's going to build out traction for you in some way? Are you using that for a drip campaign? Are you using it to keep your audience really close to you? You have to figure out exactly what way is going to work for you. I never recommend that everybody should try to do everything at once because we just don't have the capacity, especially as founders, especially when you're bootstrapped, and even so when you're trying to raise funding. You really don't have the capacity to do everything. And so you really need to think about if you are going to have a newsletter, yes, it can be great because you're building out your own mailing list. And a mailing list can actually be very valuable, but it depends on how frequently you want to update. So that's up to you. What would sway me as a PR person with respect to a climate change message? Well, I would say, it's a great question, Stacy. I would say take a look at what's being said already and try not to just reiterate what's already being said, right? I'll tell you a quick story of a founder that I was representing who we were able to get into Time magazine because I reached out to the climate reporter and I said, listen, I know that she's got a product and you don't cover products, but I think that what she's doing is indicative of a trend that we're going to be seeing in the future. And when we think about not just the production of products, but about the life cycle of products overall, and how they're being produced, that can lead to some really significant climate change. And that got us the foot in the door and we got the feature in Time for her. So that was great. So again, remember, I went back and I researched, what does she write about? What does she talk about? What was exciting, potentially exciting to her? And I pitched that exact story that I thought was good for her.
Well, you have so many questions as expected. Of course, this was amazing. Let's give Candice a virtual hand. I thought it was so funny, you talking about LinkedIn. I'm just going to share the Biz Insider piece that we had a few months ago. Literally a post that I did on LinkedIn went viral and got an entire piece in Biz Insider and the Mirror and a bunch of places, all telling my story
Mhm.
just from one LinkedIn post.
Yeah.
So it's quite powerful. And I think that people really don't realize the power of like really a consistent narrative on a certain platform. And
Mhm.
specifically LinkedIn being professionals versus like trying to do Instagram or TikTok or something
Yeah.
like that. It's just like a totally different ballgame.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of those ways to think about non-traditional visibility that can absolutely have results for you.
Awesome. Okay. Well, this is the end of our workshops. Have you had a good time so far? This is like our first half of the day. And Candice, of course, you will be seeing more of her because we are hard at work on the Vegan Women's Summit Hollywood. So for those of you that have not had a chance to come out, or maybe you came out this year or last, we are bringing back our in-person summit live in Hollywood, May 9th and 10th. You're gonna want to grab your tickets. We will be having a pre-sale launching very soon. Candice and I have been cooking up some really, really incredible big things for next year. So stay tuned on that. How's everybody been? 4 workshops in, hanging in there. Give me like a little emoji. So it's pretty incredible. We really have, we had 2 VCs speak, we had a PR expert speak, we had a consultant from one of the biggest consulting firms in the world speak. Like these truly are women that are at the top of their game, providing all of this advice and insight and education to you totally free. Thanks to Upfield, who generously sponsors this work every year because they want to see more women founders changing the world. So let's give a little thank you to Upfield real quick for helping us make this a reality. So now we're going to take a break. We're going to hop into networking. So you can meet a friend. If you joined earlier today, it's going to be the same thing. I think we've got about 15 minutes or so. So you can go grab a drink, hop on a network, post about what you're hearing about today so we can get ready for our next segment. The next segment for today is, ready? Drum roll. Everybody's got a drum roll? It is our pitch competition. So you have first half of the day is teaching you how to have all the tools you need to be a founder. And now you're going to see 9 founders go up live in front of our VC jury. And it'll be Shark Tank style competition where we are going to see who will be crowned the VWS Pathfinder winner this year. Before we get to that, you guys have a short break. So either hop on the networking or come back in 13 minutes and we will get started.